there, my name is Renee Barros, and I'm the host of Shatterproof Speaker Series, where we have important discussions around the topic of addiction. Glad you've joined us today to learn a little bit more. Here with me today is YouTuber, social media personality, podcast co-host, and we can even list him as a survivor of substance use disorder, Mike Majlak. Mike is the author of the book, The Fifth Vital, and is here to chat with us today about his wild ride to sobriety, the book, and so much more. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
There we go. We made it work. What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. Honored to be here. Appreciate you guys having me on, and love to be a part of anything that, starts in Connecticut and ends up in a bigger place. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. So let's begin by giving a little context to how our paths have crossed. Shatterproof teamed up with Wizza, and Wizza is a website where you could enter to win really cool prizes, and they donate a portion of their proceeds to nonprofits. Shatterproof happens to be one of their charity partners, and as I understand it, you're working with Wizza as an influencer and had identified addiction as something you wanted to give back to. So you chose to participate in our Stronger Than Addiction Challenge by saving someone's life. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, yeah, and first and foremost, helping to save someone's life. As addicts, we, our core power comes from within, and we make our own decision as to when we want to, start bettering ourselves and starting our path to recovery and overcoming the challenges and struggles. But yes, as a result of Wizza and our great relationship with you guys, as well as some partners that I have still on the ground in Connecticut, we're able to identify someone that was about 9 months into recovery on a second or third or 100th go around. God knows it takes quite a few attempts with this kind of thing. For a lot of us, obviously something I can relate to. And we identified a woman who was in a sober house in Branford, Connecticut. And we were able to take a portion of the proceeds from our Lamborghini giveaway with Wizza, go to her sober house in Branford, and surprise her with another year paid for in the sober home that she actually loves being at and working at. We also were able to offer $10,000 to extend to another person joining their own battle and recovery. And she's going to select and identify that person. And we were able to kick back $5,000 to the sober house for any kind of upgrades, televisions, microwaves, anything that might be broken. And also, Wizza kicked off the month of September by giving $10,000 to Shatterproof. So it's been a great start to the good cause side with Wizza, and obviously a great start to my own, kind of continued giving back to the addiction community.
Well, thank you so much. We're so happy to team up with you and support you and have your support as well. It means the world to us. So here's a clip if you want to see a little bit more about that.
Right now, we are driving on I-95 from Milford to a city called Branford to meet with a woman who's currently in a sober home. Her name's Jessica. She's got just about 9 months in recovery. She's 45 years old, but she's still struggling quite a bit financially to stay in the sober home. It's not always easy for a person in early recovery to pay for that kind of stuff. Hey, Jessica, do you do hugs?
Yeah, of course. I'm a hugger.
I'm excited to sit and hear a little bit about your story. So we've just been talking to people about the opiate epidemic, about addiction, about recovery, and I'm a guy that comes from that space myself. So I was addicted to opiates, to heroin. I was on methadone for a long time. Got clean on June 23rd, 2010, and that kind of opened up the world for me. And now I've been given the opportunity to do what I do, and my life is incredible. And before we go further at all, I do want to say thank you so much for having the courage to share your story. I can't even tell you how many people you'll probably help just by being a part of this video.
My struggle's been long. I'm 45. I've been struggling with addiction since my late teens, early 20s.
What's like the toughest thing that you've had to endure?
I relapsed after 10 years. When I got sober in my early 20s, I had surgery, got on opiates. I also am addicted to opiates, heroin, crack. After the 10 years that I was sober, I picked up, and within 6 months, I owned a house at that point. I lost my house. I lost my daughter, custody of my daughter, and I ended up on the streets with my dealers. And I ran the streets for 4 years.
What are you finding that's like driving you through this current streak of recovery, and like how do you feel about everything, and like how are things going for you right now?
I love the house. I feel safe. It's my home, and it's been a long time since I felt safe. What's driving me is I'm tired of this, and I want a life. I'm tired of surviving, and I want to live a life. I have dreams, and you know, and I'm getting older, you know, and that's, I mean, I'm 45, so it's like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Is there anything in your like active recovery, current recovery, that you're having trouble with now?
One thing that's like a tear in my heart. My daughter, we haven't seen each other in, it would be 8 years now. That's a pain that doesn't go away. It's every day. You know, I text her, I tell her I'm here when you're ready, and I'm hoping, you know, through this and through me continuing my sobriety, I can have a relationship with her one day. That's a pain that I have to deal with every day. And sometimes, and I can tell you when I had relapsed before, that was something that really, that shame and that guilt brought me down so fast. So I'm really working on, like, it's not time. She'll come to me if I stay sober and do the right thing, and I am gonna stay sober and do the right thing. Not if, I am. We'll have a relationship one day.
I know I told you and Karen that, you know, I was coming here today just to kind of have a chat with you,
Yeah.
and that's definitely a part of it. But one of the things that I remember about my early recovery was a lot of strain financially.
Oh yeah.
And I remember it just being tough just to get food or get, you know, a place to stay and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So you probably don't know who they are, but I've been working lately with this brand, Wizza. It's an online company that is going to do a lot of work in giving back to the community. And so I think this is a surprise to you, but I'm honestly here not just to talk to you today, but I'm here to help you.
You are?
Yeah, and so
What?
you do you really? Yeah. I know that Karen brought you in here at first on a 1-month scholarship, and that you've been paying month to month here, and I'm sure that's a strain on you with all the things that you'd like to do. So I'm gonna pay Karen today, and you're gonna be here for the next year without paying anything else. Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, that is such a gift. Oh my God, thank you.
Just keep it going.
I will.
Just keep it going.
What is it? This is amazing.
All right, now let's dive into the book, The Fifth Vital. I read the book, and it is.
I have this thing. Hold on.
Show us the book.
Well, I have this. Was made by a fan.
Oh.
So it's a giant painting of the cover. I have a bunch of the books as well, but yeah.
I was going to say, is that the large print?
Yeah, it's a giant book for
size 25 font.
Yeah.
So I read the book. It's nothing short of amazing. What I really like and appreciate about it is how raw and real it is. I had spoke with you a couple weeks back just about setting up this speaker series, and you said something to the effect of, like, what people really like about it is just how raw it is. So after reading the book, I completely and totally agree. There was no other way to say it. Can you give us the Cliff Notes version of the book? Because I'm sure some of our viewers have not read it yet.
Yeah, so basically before coming on all of these shows, people usually reach out to me and they say, you know, is there anything that's off limits, anything that you don't want to talk about? And I say, very similarly to the way that I wrote my book, I leave nothing out. I'm open to any kind of questions, any kind of critique, criticism. And that's the reason I believe that's the current swing and trajectory of the influencer community and of celebrity as well. People want to know the real, unrelenting, you know, raw truth of people. And so basically that's what ended up going into my book, and I believe was the driver for success. And so basically the Fifth Vital, just a little bit of an idea of why it was called that. So for the past, you know, however many hundreds of years, we've relied on 4 vital signs to lead us towards indicating the health of an individual. And those were, you know, heart, blood pressure, heart rate, temperature, and respiration, right? So they want to listen to your breathing and all these things.
Sure.
And in the early 2000s, a 5th vital sign, the 5th vital, was kind of added to that list. And that was nurses or doctors asking the end user, how much pain are you in right now? So they would ask you to identify your pain on a scale of 1 to 10, or using a series of sad and happy faces. This new edition of the Fifth Vital led to the massive exponential increase in the prescription of painkillers in America, which then by way of a million other micro events led to what is one of the greatest epidemics in the history of the United States. Took 93,000 Americans' lives last year, which is up tremendously because of the pandemic and lack of resources and access to healthcare. And so basically, I was a part of that story. I was born in Milford, Connecticut in 1985. And in the early 2000s, I was a 17, 18-year-old college student. High school student at Foreign High School in Milford. I was in high school during a very, formative and malleable time in my life, and unfortunately was, given access to a large amount of painkillers that were overprescribed, overmarketed, and, flooded the streets of America. We don't have to get into too much about who did that or why it happened, but it happened. And as a result, a good chunk of my classmates and I were introduced to, whether by injury or recreational use, a very powerful painkiller. I know, once again, we'll just skip saying the name of it, even though everyone watching knows exactly what I'm talking about. And as a result of that, it led to me going down one of the most graphic, grim, and gruesome, addiction routes that has been chronicled. I would say, just a almost 10-year addiction to heroin, to crack cocaine, to prescription benzos and opiates, as well as methadone, and just a real gruesome story with stabbings, car accidents, federal raids, tons of tears, blood, and every other kind of part of war that goes into the battle that is addiction. And so I blessedly and luckily got clean started my path to recovery, I should say, in 2010. On June 23rd, 2010, and I've been in recovery since then, and haven't used any of my drugs of choice or opiates or any of those things since then. I started writing the book in 2013, and it took me a very long time to write, and I released it in 2020 last year.
Okay. So first and foremost, congratulations on your recovery and sobriety. I don't know if anybody's told you lately, but you're a masterful storyteller. I love the way you unpack the story. Every chapter is told from a different year in your life, and it begins with the statistics on the number of opioid deaths that occurred in that year. The other thing I loved was that you dismantle common thoughts around addiction. Like, for example, I'm not quoting exactly here, but you were like, the year is 1999, the number of opioid deaths is whatever. And you talk about how you were cutting your sister's hair and your family had a trip to an amusement park later that day, and you didn't get to go on any rides because you were the kid that had consequences for your actions. And the way that you tell the story, it kind of peels back all the layers on what common misconceptions, I should say, around addiction, that this only affects a certain socioeconomic status, that it's the result of bad parenting, that it's simply the result of poor choices, that it's lack of willpower, that you tackle all of these things from every different angle, but still tell the story, and we see it unfold, and we see the deaths growing year over year.
Yeah. I mean, the last thing I ever wanted anyone to think was that I was from some sort of broken home, or I wanted to fall back on any of that stuff. And God knows I tried for a long time, and there's, and even more more than me, my therapist, and everybody's always looking for this one reason. Was he abused as a child? Was he, did this happen and that happen? I was raised in a very, very, good home. My parents were incredible parents. My mom was a PTA mom. She did all the cupcakes and, had a Band-Aid every time I fell off my bike and was always there for me. My father was a businessman and, traveled and he was there to discipline me until my parents divorced when I was 15. And who knows, maybe that divorce was a factor, but long story short, I always had a support system. I had two very good sisters that loved me, and a great family. And that is a huge part of the story, and a part of the story that needs to be told. This addiction and substance abuse and even more so, mental illness are not assigned to any socioeconomic group or any group of people that could fit into any bucket of any kind.
Sure.
It's a disease, or a number of diseases that can attack anyone. And the majority of people that I know personally in my life who fell into the pits of addiction or dependence were people from good homes, because that was the community I was raised in. So in fact, for me, it's the opposite. The majority of people I know were very, were educated, driven, family centered athletes that were either introduced to painkillers through injuries or through recreational use, that unfortunately, because of the lack of information at the time and lack of consequences to big pharma as a result of whatever was going on at the time, we didn't have all the facts. And so unfortunately we ended up doing things that a lot of kids hopefully nowadays are a little bit wiser to not do.
So I think it's human nature to want to point to what caused this, especially when as a parent you want to prevent it, right? So I think that it's natural for people to be like, was it this? Was it that? And I think the underlying point here is that it doesn't matter. It just is. It exists. It is indiscriminate, and it'll come after anybody, anywhere. And it's not about why or where it came from, but how are we treating it and what are we doing about it? So something that struck me throughout the book was your mindset. At every struggle you faced, it sounded to me like you had this voice inside of you that I would imagine is quieter at times and louder at others, but that was letting you know that everything was going to be okay. Even long before you found recovery, you said, and I quote, "Get in the habit of trusting yourself. You're smarter than you know." It's that whole serenity prayer mindset. Can you tell me more about where that voice came from, how you trained it to be louder than the other voice that we all have, which is beating you down?
It's just, I think it's just the most important thing. And I think that innately as a human, there's a million things that you think you need to succeed at. I'm not disciplined enough. I don't go to the gym enough. I spend too much time doing A, B, or C. I don't spend enough time doing A, B, or C. And the priority of all of those things in your life, you try to, juggle all these things, and you walk this tightrope and try to find this balance. But for whatever reason, at a young age, for me, the one that I always knew was the only thing that mattered was to keep going, no matter what happened. And I think that, I don't know why I had that in me. I dealt with some very young trauma, whether it was the bad sides of that existed within my family, which I think everyone deals with, or some very, very traumatic injuries that I suffered in my early teens that put me on ICU tables and in very, very serious surgeries at a young age. And I spent a lot of time in and out of ICUs and have a lot of scars on my body to kind of remind me of it. But I got in the habit of being in these extremely, extremely uncomfortable situations that, that question pops in your mind, like, can I even do this? Is it even possible, humanly possible, for me to make it through this? And I started training myself to garner this warrior spirit that exists inside every single one of us, that just needs to be tapped and reminded and brought to the surface, that there is no giving up, and that continuing on. And I say it in the book a lot. On days that you can run towards your goals. On days that you can walk towards your goals. On days that you could limp or hobble towards your goals. And on a lot of the days, especially for us addicts and people that are in recovery, on days you have to crawl and tear for every inch of turf, crawl and dig your hands into the dirt and pull yourself through it. I had to do that physically and mentally for decades. And I'll never forget that stuff. And there's times nowadays still where I have to do that, where the cards start to stack against me, and I have to dig back in, and I have to get back on the ground and pull myself through it. And you know, that's the most important thing that you'll ever learn in life is finding that perseverance in you to not give up. I continue to suffer from a lot of the struggles and demons that I struggled with prior to my addiction: anxiety, OCD, days of really bad depression where I don't think I have it in me to sit with an A-list actor on a podcast, or to interview a massive athlete, or to have, you know, Mike Tyson on the show, or you know, one of these big guests, Russell Brand, all these people that we've interviewed and had the opportunity to interview. My anxiety's firing up. I can't do this show today. I've never once not sat in the seat and tried. And I've sweat. And I've sat on the show and had to say, I'm so sorry, like I'm having an anxious meltdown today. And because of where we're headed as a society right now, instead of people laughing or calling me names, they say, yo, take your time. You want to go leave, come back in a few minutes, go take a few breaths in the bathroom. And like, that's what I fight for now, is breaking that stigma that we can't exist with these demons and continue to move forward in life.
Well, that inner voice is just so important. I was about halfway through the book when you talked about being on a show and like the panic taking over and you had to walk out. And last week I was in New York in Times Square doing the Stronger Than Addiction Challenge, and had really not too much pre-scripted and had to go live for 10 minutes. And you know that feeling where you like start to see stars and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to freak out. And I remembered I'm just going to take a deep breath. I got this. And in your inner dialogue, it's just important. So that was a key point I wanted to touch on here. Which brings me to my next question. Working in this space offers me a lot of opportunities to talk with people who have suffered a lot from addiction. I talk to parents who have lost children, people who have lost their lives, parts of their lives to substance use disorder, and even people who learn how to forgive someone from the effects that came their way as a result of substance use disorder. I see a common thread in all of these people that I see in you, and that is that pain has a purpose. And if you let it, you can channel that pain into something extraordinary. And at one point in the book, you said, all of my pain and struggles put me in a unique position to give words of encouragement to people in their own times of hardship and peril. Can you talk a little bit more about all of the things that you went through and what kind of purpose that serves for you now in helping other people?
People ask me this question sometimes, like, would you go back and do it again? Would you trade it all in? Would you go to college? Like, would you, do things differently? And honestly, like, the answer, I can't be any quicker when I say no. I wouldn't change anything. I mean, the stuff that I went through was not to disrespect anyone who's gone to war, but it was in a lot of ways a war for myself, and physically, mentally, emotionally, as well as violent, and so, but I wouldn't trade any of it, because it not only trained me to be a very tough, very, driven individual who won't give up in times of peril, or what, us addicts and people in recovery would look at as minor inconveniences. A lot of these things that people, fret over in their normal lives, we don't fret about quite as much. But more than anything, that pain gives you the most important thing you'll ever find in life, and that's empathy and perspective. And so the empathy that I got from suffering and from going through the stuff that I went through is what makes me such an incredible conversationalist, and what makes me able to build rapport with people I speak to in seconds, because I there's a good chance that I could relate to whatever pain you have. I call pain the great connector. And I say that pain is the one thing that we can all relate to each other on. And there's no greater connector than shared pain. And being able to look at somebody and be like, I went through that same thing. You know, how did you get out of it? Let's talk. Let's sit and talk. And it automatically builds this connective tissue between you and somebody that you just met. And so like, it's you know, I really wouldn't trade any of it. It's you know, my good friend Logan Paul always says that, you know, muscle is built by breaking down and rebuilding muscle. You know, you can't get muscle without tearing that muscle that already exists. And so, you know, all of that pain and trauma is the greatest thing that ever happened to me that made me who I am today.
That's awesome. I love your take on it. So one thing, while I was reading the book, it you know, you start in childhood, you kind of unpack how you became addicted, and then you take us on this journey of all these crazy things that happened. You should probably be dead like 20 times already, if not more. Yeah. And I kept thinking in the back of my mind, like, before I read the book, I had Googled you. I had seen what kind of success you had attained. And I was like, oh my God, where is this going? Because how did this come from here and get all the way over here? So can you talk a little bit more about some of the opportunities that came your way and like what the turning points were? I know Lovesack gave you a soft place to land.
Yeah, not nice. I like that a lot. That was good. It's been a wild ride. It's been a lot of really, really like lucky situations. It's been a absolute metric ton of hard work, and it's been a lot of looking for opportunities as well. And so the story I always tell is, you know, in the beginning, it was it was a lot of fake it till you make it. And when you know, when I got out of rehab in 2010, in the summer of 2010, just like pretty much every other person that comes, you know, out of rehab or into early recovery, I had nothing. I had absolutely nothing. I had no friends. I had to either stay away from friends. They were dead. They had, you know, their own criminal and substance abuse issues. So I had no one. My family had pretty much said, yo, like, until you really figure this out, we can't really. My mom stayed with me the whole time. She never gave up. And I don't even want to call it giving up. Families have to protect themselves at some point, and because it just gets so wild, right? But you know, I had a 400 credit score. I had no car. I had nothing. I was 285 pounds. I was morbidly obese. My teeth were falling out of my head. I had, you know, I was a convicted felon. Obviously, I had every single thing against me. And so at first, I worked on myself. I worked on my recovery. Worked on my body. I think what happens is, the easiest way to look at it is in recovery, you start broad at the easy wins, and then you start to fine tune. The biggest, not easiest, but the biggest win, and the only one that truly matters is starting your path to recovery. There's no workaround there. There's no cheat code. There's no, oh, I'm only going to use on these days. Right? That's step one. And I tell people all the time that are still, you know, out there using drugs or abusing substances, that's just got to be step one. There's no, like, they're like, well, what if you gave me an assistant job? I'm like, no, that's not how it works. You have to go and figure that out. So you start that process, but then I was overweight. So I got a hand-me-down bike, and I found that I really loved cycling. Mm-hmm. And so I started riding the bike, and I realized, well, I'm overweight. I should at least try eating some clean foods. And so I started eating some clean foods, and all of a sudden I started to lose weight, and I started to feel really good. And I lost almost 100 pounds in my early recovery. And then what happened was my family came back around, and my older sister said, you know, why don't I introduce you to some people who may want to take a chance on you, because you're doing really well. You're doing a good job. And so she hooked me up with somebody who said, you know, you could walk dogs for me. And I love dogs. And so I started walking dogs. And as time went on, I started finding this connection between trying to do things that I really liked. And I knew that I liked taking pictures, and I had a tiny bit of money together from walking dogs. And so I went and I bought this camera. And I just went out and started taking pictures. I was like, look, I could take pictures of stuff. This is fun. I didn't do it because I was going to make money. I just did it because it made me happy, and it didn't involve drugs or any of my, vices. And one day I was at the Milford duck pond and I was taking pictures and stuff. And this girl came up to me and she was like, oh my God, like you're a photographer. Have you ever taken pictures I'm looking for a wedding photographer. Have you ever taken wedding pictures? And I said to her, as a matter of fact, I'm one of the best wedding photographers in the state of Connecticut, which wasn't necessarily the case.
Not just, yes, I've done it. As a matter of fact, I'm one of the best.
So what I always tell people is, as opposed to saying that you're trying things, just be those things. You're not trying anything. You are what you want to be. And so she said, well, what's your price? And I said, what's your budget? And she gave me her budget, and I went and I shot photos at her wedding, and they came out great, and I did a great job, and she was super happy about it. And I left, and I think she paid me like $750. I worked all day. I edited all the photos, everything. I took that money, rolled it in with some of the other money I had, and I went and I bought a drone, a DJI drone. Drones had just gotten big. And I was at the beach one day, and I was flying this drone, and I was, messing around, and quite literally someone said to me, have you ever done drone cinematography at a wedding before? I have a wedding coming up, and I know you do wedding photography. Have you ever used a drone? And
let me guess. And you were like, as a matter of fact, I'm the best at drone footage.
As a matter of fact, I'm Connecticut's leading aerial cinematographer for weddings. And she said, what does it cost? I said, what's your budget? And so, a couple months later, I flew a drone above her walking down the aisle, and she paid me like $2,500 or whatever. And so I always tell people, fake it till you make it is a great strategy, especially for us people in early recovery, and especially if it's something that you really love to do. That all of this photo and video stuff was a great start. And one day I was with my friend, and we were at Subway, and I saw this a week earlier, actually, I'd seen this Craigslist ad for somebody who needed a social media coordinator. And I was like, okay. And at that time, I'd also started a food blog on Instagram, and I had started taking pictures of food and all this stuff. And it said he was looking for somebody to work his PR and social media at this, big furniture company in Stamford, Connecticut. And so I applied. I didn't think anything of it. And I got a call a week later from Sean, and he was like, hey, would you want to come to Stamford to talk to me, about your pursuits in the PR and brand awareness world? And I started spitting out all these, fancy words that I Googled. And, a week later I met him, and he hired me for this role at Lovesac. And there's a whole bunch to unpack there, but that then led to a text message I got one day from Logan Paul, who was looking for a beanbag chair that he could have.
Who happens to be like one of the world's most influential social media influencers, right?
Correct. Yep. And I didn't know who he was. I was, in my mid-20s. I didn't know what Vine was and all this stuff. And long story short, Cliff Notes version, it led to me and Logan, kind of starting this relationship. And I was, able to provide value to him. And God knows he provided endless value to my life. And we started a podcast together in November of 2018. Or it might even been November, December 2018, whatever. And we've done 300 episodes since with some of the biggest celebrities on earth. Mike Tyson, Ben Shapiro, whether you like him or not, Alex Jones. I don't think anybody likes him, but we had him on. We've had a bunch of very wild and Bella Thorne. I mean, we've had everybody on the show. And that it's been a crazy journey. And then also, have my own YouTube channel, which has allowed me to do incredible things, travel the world, meet, incredible people, and more importantly than anything, continue to give back to the addiction community and tell people and show people that us addicts, us people in recovery are strong, smart, driven, persevering people that could do anything if we put our minds to it. And I obviously got a bunch of lucky breaks, but I've worked my ass off to get to the place that I'm in today and never gave up. And so it's important that everybody watching this episode or anybody that's in the family of someone who should watch this episode knows that we do some incredible things.
Yeah. So just watching, like, I don't know, I liken it to like you bounce a ball and for as far down as it goes back up again. Like humans are such powerful beings. And if our energy is channeled in the right direction, I mean, you can do the worst of things in the world or the best of things. And I think you're a walking example of that. You came from such dark, just horrible times, like stuff that, you know, horrible things. And then we're able to turn it all around. And one key point in your trajectory of success that really stood out to me was when you talked about how you were going from working at Lovesac to this opportunity out in LA with Logan Paul, and you were riddled with guilt because not only did Lovesac give you this great opportunity, but also you had put your family and friends through so much, and you finally got it together, and then felt like in particular you would be breaking your mother's heart. And as a mom myself, I'm listening in on that, and your mom's response to that was so spot on, where she said, all I ever wanted for you was to see you happy. And she gave you her blessing and let you go. And I can't think of a bigger statement of love, you know, like love doesn't hold you close. It lets go when it has to. And I loved the quote you said about, I knew there was so much more for me out there. I knew there was so much I owed the world and so much the world could offer me back. All I had to do was make the jump. And that's when you made the leap to the West Coast.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Whenever my mom gets brought up, I'm a softie for my mom. I'm obsessed with her. She's my favorite person on the planet. I talk to her every day, and she's a massive part of, you know, my recovery. And you know, I luckily get to talk to her and see her all the time. And yeah, that was a wild decision I had to make. You know, I had to imagine, you know, you've already got this job and you've worked your way up at this company to become this, you know, marketing manager. And, you know, in recovery, well, more so in addiction, but even in recovery, like all we ever know is uncertainty and chaos. And now you've got this job where you get this check. And I was making, I think, you know, almost $100,000 a year at the time, and like, which was insane to me. And I owned, you know, an apartment in South Norwalk, and I had everything set up, and I was like, this is great. And they were giving me stock ownership and a 401k program. I had a whole future set up for myself. And I'm like sitting there, like the idea that I'm going to walk away from that and take this chance, you know, in this very kind of uncertain community of influencer, like where anything could happen, was wild. And so, yeah, that was a crazy decision, but you know, it paid off, obviously.
obviously. So the book ends in 2018 with 33 chapters. If we were to begin chapter 34 with the year 2020, the onset of the pandemic, what would we be talking about there? How has COVID made everything real fun?
Well, ironically, you know, it definitely made things easier for me, at least in my recovery, because there was no events, there was nothing to go to. And so I found it really easy to take 2020 and really focus on fitness, to focus on work, and to focus on a lot of those things. That said, you know, I know there's a lot of people out there who don't have the same kind of workflow and jobs and that I do, and so they probably struggled quite a bit. But you know, I think it was it's been challenging for a lot of people. I think it also, you know, it went the other way in a lot of ways and gave people the opportunity to get to know themselves a little bit better. You know, there's with the lack of things going on and things to do out there, I think it forced a lot of people to kind of get to know themselves, and that could be either a very fun thing or a very unfun thing, depending on how, you know, you are at the time.
Sure.
But you know, I think overall for the world, it's definitely been quite the challenge. But you know, for me, it's definitely been a chance for me to kind of get to know who I am, what I want, and to focus a little bit more on getting those things. So I probably have a bit of a different perspective on things than the average person out there.
Well, I think when it comes to the pandemic, it impacted everybody in different ways. For some, it made life easier, and for others, it made it really harder. So I think the key here is that, like you said, you're just open and honest about what it was for you. You're quoted in the book as saying there are hundreds of stories to tell, and the list refreshes every week. I hear the next story you've got going on is a good one. Tell us about your next endeavor with Mike Spikes.
Oh yeah, that's a program that we've been working on for some time. Hopefully have a launch date for it soon. It's one of the biggest challenges as you continue to grow in life is balancing all these things. And so I wish I could have got it done sooner. But basically, as I mentioned earlier, cycling has always been a big part of my life. It still is. And in my early recovery, I was given this hand-me-down bike from my mom. It was a red giant, like hybrid mountain bike. And I, when I started my early recovery, I had no, first and foremost, I was obese, I was morbidly obese, and I couldn't run. My ankle was thrashed from pre-existing injuries. And so I needed a low impact way to exercise, but I also had no way to get around. I had no way to get to my 90 meetings in 90 days. I had no way to get to my, to my counseling appointments or my therapist. I had no way to get to job interviews. I had a terrible credit score. I couldn't get a car. So I needed transportation. And more than anything else, I needed a way to get out of my head. And I needed a way to keep my body moving, because I knew for me personally that was a way to get my mind to slow down, because I was working out, and exercise has always been a huge coping tactic for me.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
The important role that, and there's even science to it, right? I mean, you get that endorphin rush when you work out and do physical activity.
100%.
So what's next with Mike Spikes? Is the aim here to get bikes to people that are in recovery?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So I found bikes to be a tremendous help for me in my early recovery, and now I want to extend that same kind of program to other people. And so what we're trying to do is put together this program where not only are we able to take donations and donor money to purchase bikes to give out to people in early recovery, but also maybe do some rides in different cities where we could all get together and raise money. I'll probably at some point enter the speaking circuit and talk to kids and people in recovery, as well as we all battle to kind of end the stigma around the disease of addiction and dependence. And so it's a multifaceted org, and it's still in its infancy, and we've been working with a 501(c) by the name of Think Kindness to put it together. And so it's all work in progress, but that's the goal.
Well, congrats on your work with that. So you end the book by saying there's one rule to live by: be good to other people. The only thing that truly feels good is the good I can help create in someone else. This is a concept that if we could get more people to live by it, we could see a seismic shift in the way the world operates, specifically around addiction. The mindset needs to be more about stepping outside of yourself, spreading love, compassion, empathy, judging less, and helping more. Mike, thank you so much for being a shining example of that. I know I speak for everyone watching when I say we're so proud of you and we're so inspired by you and can't wait to see what the next chapter is all about.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
For more information on Mike's upcoming projects, follow him by clicking on the links below. Mike, thanks again for everything. We look forward to working more with you.
Appreciate you guys.